I deceived my cheating wife by making her believe I was having an affair, then vanished like a thermonuclear ninja ghost and handed her divorce papers on Christmas.
I hope you have some time because this is going to be a very long story. The events described span from late 2019 onward, and as required by the rules, all names have been changed. Here's the backstory. My wife was my high school sweetheart. We started dating in 1992 when we were both 17. We're now both 45, and we'd been together ever since. She's the only woman I've ever been with. We got married 5 years later, at age 22, right after college. A year after that, our first of 2 sons was born. I gave her 23 years of my life, built us a home, and worked like hell to give her the life she dreamed of. Sure, we had tough times, but what couple doesn't? Even in our hardest moments, we always found a way through and emerged stronger. That's why her infidelity came as such a shock.
In March 2020, I first sensed that something was off in our relationship. 2 months prior, we'd hit a rough patch. I was recovering from knee surgery, having torn my ACL in the fall of 2019, and still couldn't move normally. At that point, I had only about 55% mobility in my knee. This significantly impacted many household tasks. I was on disability leave since I'd injured myself at work and couldn't fulfill my usual domestic responsibilities. My sons helped where they could, but certain tasks only I could handle had to be postponed or shifted onto my wife, which frustrated her. Our intimacy had also nearly disappeared. It had already been dwindling before my injury, but now it had stopped completely. During these months, my wife, we'll call her Sue, started spending more time with colleagues after work. From November 2019 through March 2020, this became routine for her. Naturally, I didn't think much of it. In 23 years together, I'd never had a single reason to doubt or distrust her. She had her own friendships. I had mine. Plus, we shared a mutual social circle. I often hung out with my friends too, and it had never been an issue. Sometime in January 2020, I noticed something odd. Sue had started pulling away from me noticeably. Yes, we were going through a rough patch, but she'd never refused me affection before. The casual hugs and kisses she used to give me stopped completely. Her phone was always in her hand, long before I even began to suspect anything, but previously she'd constantly show me interesting things from online. Pinterest crafts, recipes, memes, you name it. Now, she'd grown secretive about her phone and her communication with me had become sharper, as if I annoyed her. Then, March 2020 arrived. The pandemic hit, and New York went into lockdown. Our professions were deemed essential, so we didn't have to work from home. I had just received clearance to return to work after 5 months of disability leave. I was eager to get back. Those 5 months of inactivity, no workouts, no martial arts, no gym, had been driving me crazy. I typically trained 4 times a week and handled most physical chores around the house. A week or 2 into lockdown, Sue told me she'd need to stay late at work. Again, I didn't think much of it given the nature of her job. I assumed it would happen every other day. But no, she stayed late every single day. Not by an hour or 2, but 3 or more. She'd come home, go straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, a little with our 17-year-old son. Our older son, 22, lived with his girlfriend in another borough, and then go straight to bed.
As my knee improved, we resumed intimacy. But, as you've probably guessed, she was emotionally and mentally checked out. I noticed it right away. By early April, things were starting to click into place for me. All the signs pointed to her having an affair. That's when I decided I needed answers. I started digging online for information on what to look for. I found lists of common signs of a cheating partner, and of course, she matched nearly all of them. I expanded my search and began looking for ways to find proof. I started with her social media. Scrolling through her Facebook posts from the previous months, everything looked normal. Photos of us with our sons, pictures with her friends, and several shots from her evening outings with coworkers. In those photos were both her close work friends and a few people I'd never met. but I noticed one recurring detail. In many photos, one guy was always standing too close to my wife. His hand rested on her shoulder or her lower back. Way too intimate for someone I'd never met in person. To say the least, I didn't like it. But that wasn't even the worst part. It turned out this guy was friends with her on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. I decided to check out his Facebook profile, and what do you think I found? He had blocked me. Why in the hell would a complete stranger block me from viewing his profile while being Facebook friends with my wife? Yeah, Batman-level detective mode activated. At that point, I was no longer in denial. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy. My mission became clear. Find out how long it had been going on. Throughout April and May, that's exactly what I did. I had no idea how much dirt I'd uncover once I started digging. We were on a shared family cell plan, which gave me access to a lot of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's call log was telling. From October 2019 through April 2020, the two numbers she contacted most often were mine and one I'd never seen before. Guess whose number that was? A quick Google search confirmed it belonged to the same guy from the photos, the one who'd blocked me on Facebook. Let's call him Scumbag, because that's exactly what he is. The picture became even clearer, but many of their messages were deleted, meaning she was actively erasing parts of their conversations. I knew she was cheating, but I lacked direct evidence. I needed more. That's when I told my best friend Ozzy what I'd found. He asked if I'd confronted her with the facts. I said no. I didn't feel it was enough. Then he told me about an app I could install to monitor her communications in real time. I installed it, synced it with our plan, and waited. Within a few days, I finally saw the proof. Messages between them about how much fun they'd had the night before and their plans to do it again that weekend. Boom. Gut punch. Saying I was shocked doesn't even come close. I'd say that was the turning point. For the next 2 days, I was shattered. I deliberately distanced myself from her, something she clearly noticed. She tried to comfort me, asking what was wrong, but I brushed her off and walked away. I couldn't even look at her. The woman I'd given 23 years of my life to, the woman I'd given everything I had and more, who'd betrayed me with a guy only 5 years older than our eldest son. On the third day, I wasn't sad anymore. I was furious.
I contacted Ozzy to tell him my suspicions had been confirmed, and he asked if I'd spoken to my wife about it. I said no, and that I wanted revenge. I didn't just want to divorce her, I wanted to punish her. I wanted to leave her life in ruins, completely obliterated. That required time, so I devised a plan. While researching infidelity online, I came across a quote that stuck with me. The enemy of a cheater is unpredictability, or something close to that. That became the foundation of my strategy. I was going to turn her world into a living nightmare while secretly preparing my exit. By early June, I still had the monitoring app installed. Almost every night, I gathered as much data as I could, watching their messages unfold. They were acting like they were in a full-blown romantic relationship, flirting, sexting, exchanging memes, the whole package. At that point, I stopped reading emotionally. I just copied everything and archived it on my private server. Meanwhile, I started behaving unusually. I began leaving the house at odd hours and coming home even later than she did. I spent far more time on my phone, and whenever she asked what I was doing, I'd just say, "Stuff," and put the phone away. I also changed all my account passwords to prevent her from accessing my data. Keep in mind, throughout our 23-year marriage, we'd never hidden anything from each other. But around the time she started cheating, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, claiming it was due to recent security issues. Sure, a convenient excuse to hide her affair from her husband. Anyway, I filled Ozzy in on my plan, and also told my older, and only, sister and my 2 closest friends. These are people I'd trust with my life, and I made them swear to keep it secret. For context, Ozzy and I have been friends since childhood. Our other friends, Joey and Nina, have known us since high school. Keep Nina in mind. She'll play a role later. By July, my wife had fully spiraled into paranoia. She started texting and calling me far more often, asking when I'd be home and what I was doing. I could tell the seed of doubt I'd planted the previous month was finally taking root. This was especially clear in her conversations with her lover. She told him about her confusion and suspicions, complaining that I'd grown cold and distant. The nerve! During one of their chats, she even suggested they stop meeting at our house because she had no idea when I might suddenly show up, which confirmed that yes, she'd been bringing that dirtbag into our home. Thanks, Sue. In one message, the scumbag asked if she was bothered by the possibility that I might be cheating on her, which of course infuriated her. I can't even describe how much joy and laughter that conversation gave me. My cheating wife arguing with her lover about whether it upset her that her husband might be unfaithful. The irony was delicious. For the record, I never cheated on her. When I left the house, I was either hanging out with Ozzy or Joey, drinking, watching fights, or at my sister's place with her husband, who's like an older brother to me. My sister is 52, her husband is 58. She told him about my wife's affair, but didn't mention my revenge plan. I couldn't risk it. He's a talker.
Fast forward to October. That's when things took a serious turn. I'd been deep in my fake affair for 3 months, and Sue could clearly tell I was pulling away from her. From the day I launched my plan until our confrontation on October 20, 2020, I hadn't touched her. Not a hug, not a kiss, nothing. Zero physical contact. But she didn't seem to mind much. She was still sleeping with Scumbag, only now at his place or in motels instead of our home. That day, she called me at work and asked me to come straight home after my shift, saying she needed to talk about something important. I'll admit, I half expected her to finally confess to the affair, but of course, she didn't. Instead, when I walked in, she asked if I was unhappy with her. The audacity! She pointed out that I'd been spending too much time away from home, showing her no affection, and that our intimacy had vanished. She said she was worried I was pushing her away because of how she'd treated me during my knee recovery. And then she dropped the most ridiculous question of all. Are you cheating on me? Guys, I literally collapsed on the floor laughing, hysterically. Not just a chuckle, but full-on Joker-style maniacal laughter. From her perspective, it probably looked like I was laughing at the mere idea of infidelity. But in truth, I was laughing at the sheer irony of the situation unfolding right in front of me. I rolled on the floor in tears for about 5 minutes before I could pull myself together enough to respond. When I finally sat up and looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, I just shook my head and gave no answer. Then I stood up, dusted myself off, kissed the top of her head, and went back to my work. Later that night, in my office, I decided to check what she was saying to Scumbag. I opened the monitoring app, and sure enough, they were texting. She told him, I know he's cheating on me. I asked him today, and he just laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and rolled around for like 5 minutes. Of course, it wasn't actually 5 minutes. He clearly doesn't care about my feelings anymore. I don't know why, but he's left me. I know I've lost him. It's karma. I deserve this. The grin that spread across my face at that moment must have resembled the Cheshire Cat's. She was falling apart, and Scumbag tried to comfort her, saying things like, if he really loved you, you wouldn't have needed to come to me for what he wasn't giving you. But her replies made it clear she was starting to have serious doubts. She had the nerve to cheat on me because I couldn't fulfill my husbandly duties due to a legitimate painful injury, and then carried on with this affair for nearly a year? And now the mere thought that she might lose me to another woman was enough to shake her to her core? What a coward.
So around this time, I was also deep into the next phase of my revenge plan, getting my finances in order. In September, I met with a family law attorney to begin the divorce process, armed with the mountain of evidence I'd gathered by then. In New York, divorces fall into 2 categories, fault-based and no fault. The overwhelming proof of Sue's infidelity virtually guaranteed I could corner her in court. My lawyer advised me to get all financial matters sorted ahead of the asset division, but I went further. I secretly withdrew all funds from our joint account and transferred them to my personal one.
I also began searching for an apartment as part of phase 2 of my plan. By November, I hadn't softened my behavior. In fact, I intensified it. This is where my friend Nina comes in. For context, I'd never been particularly close to Nina before. I met her in my freshman year of high school, 2 years before I met Sue. Back then, Sue never saw Nina as a threat because Nina was my closest female friend. Still, there'd always been an unspoken sense that Sue didn't fully trust her. Sue never said it outright, but it was obvious to anyone who knew us. Nina, in turn, had never been a big fan of Sue. Early in my relationship with Sue, Nina pointed out how Sue had aggressively inserted herself into our friend group, while I was never invited into hers. That annoyed Nina because she understood exactly why she did it, because of her. To this day, Sue's friend circle includes no men except Scumbag. Meanwhile, Nina remains the only woman in my inner circle. Nina had been stranded overseas due to the pandemic, but finally returned to New York on November 3rd. Ozzy, Joey, and I decided to celebrate her return with dinner and drinks at Joey's place. There were only 5 of us: Ozzy, Joey and his wife, who's also Nina's sister, Nina, and me. Ever the clever fox, Nina hatched a devilish plan to push Sue over the edge. She suggested we take photos mimicking the ones I'd found of Sue and Scumbag months earlier and post them on my Facebook. That's exactly what we did. Sue found out on November 5th. I'm guessing some mutual friends saw my posts and noticed how uncomfortably close Nina and I appeared. This deeply rattled Sue, as she still firmly believed I was cheating on her. I'm almost certain she wanted to blame Nina, but she knew Nina had spent most of the year in Europe. Still, that evening, Sue tried to confront me for being too affectionate in those photos. I saw the perfect chance to land the first real blow. I said, "What about those photos of you and Scumbag last year? He was all over you too, but I never lost my mind over it." She was stunned. It was the first time I'd even mentioned his name. The gears in her head started spinning as she scrambled for an excuse. She hadn't even known I'd seen those photos since I rarely use Facebook, and when I do post, it's a rare event. That's why the photos with Nina caused such a stir in our social circles. And here's what she came up with. "Oh, he's just like that with everyone. He's a friendly guy. I get how it looks, but there's nothing going on. Sorry if those photos hurt you, I'll delete them." No, it's not about the photos. It's about you fucking that guy for a whole year while lying to me that you were working late or hanging out with friends. That's what hurt me. From that night on, Sue became unnervingly affectionate and clingy towards me, almost annoyingly so. She kept trying to show me love and initiate intimacy, but I ignored her at every opportunity. I continued archiving everything she wrote to Scumbag. By this point, I'd long since gone numb. Any lingering desire to salvage our marriage had died the day I launched phase 1 of my plan.
She messaged Scumbag saying everything had only gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do and felt like I simply hated her. I genuinely do. And then came the turning point. She told him she couldn't see him anymore. Overwhelming guilt was eating her alive and she felt karma closing in. She couldn't risk losing me, she claimed. She deeply loved Scumbag, but was still in love with me and had to save our marriage. Too bad, sweetheart, you're about 8 months too late. Scumbag lost it. He sent her all the usual lines. "He doesn't love you like I do. You're making a huge mistake. You can't just throw away what we have." Throughout November and December, Sue remained stuck in limbo. She kept trying to figure out what was going on in my head, but still couldn't confirm whether I was actually cheating or not. Meanwhile, Scumbag bombarded her with daily messages, but she stopped replying. I often caught her checking her phone, then quickly putting it away. By this time, phase 2 of my plan was complete. The divorce paperwork was ready. I had found a studio apartment in the Bronx and signed a 2-year lease. All my money was in my personal account. I was ready to deliver the final blow. Thanksgiving arrived. My older son and his girlfriend hosted a small dinner for our closest family. Them, her parents, she's an only child, Sue, our younger son, and me. We had a great evening. The girls studying culinary arts and cooked everything herself. That kid can seriously cook. Since I needed to maintain the appearance that Sue and I were fine, I showed her affection several times that night. A kiss on the cheek, a warm hug, putting my arm around her from behind. She was thrilled. Keep in mind, this was the first time I'd touched her since that October night when I kissed her on the forehead after her confrontation. 2 months had passed. I'll be honest, it disgusted me, but it was necessary. If I'd kept distancing myself in front of our sons, his girlfriend, and her parents, it would have raised questions. Our younger son stayed over at his brother's that night, and Sue and I headed home. On the drive back, she thanked me for being so kind and said, "I don't know what's going on with you, honey, but I'm here." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing again. I just replied, "I know, I just need time." That night, for the first time since spring, we were intimate. I figured, what the hell, might as well get one last use out of her before I wipe her from my life. I won't go into details, but it wasn't lovemaking. When I was done, she lay there looking like she'd just been hit by a truck. No cuddling, no words, just silence. I got up, showered, and went to sleep in my office. She was clearly thrown off by the fact that I'd used a condom for the first time in 20 damn years. She didn't ask why, but it definitely puzzled her. Of course I wasn't having unprotected sex with her, not after she'd been fucking Scumbag for months. The next morning, the first thing I did was check the monitoring app. For the first time in weeks, she'd replied to Scumbag. The guy went full meltdown, confessed his love, told her she was wasting her time trying to revive a dead flame, said she'd been trapped in a cage with me for 23 years and that she deserved real love from a man who would cherish her. Let me remind you, he's only 5 years older than our son. This dude was that into a 45-year-old married mother of 2. Now that's what I call peak simp behavior. She was willing to destroy our marriage and tear down the home we'd built just for him? Her reply was nearly identical to her last message to him. She said she loved him and cherished their time together, but couldn't lose me. I was still the love of her life, but he'd always have a place in her heart. She offered to stay friends if he wanted, but their physical relationship was over. He begged her for one last meetup, and as you've guessed, she agreed. One more time for old time's sake, right? Who am I to judge? After all, I'd done the same the night before. Of course, I added all this new data to the archive I'd been compiling.
On December 4th, Phase 3, the final phase of my plan, began. The divorce papers were in my hands, and my new residence was ready. Now I needed to gradually move my belongings out of the house, but first, I had to tell my sons. On Friday evening, I called my older son over and invited both boys into my office and told them everything. I kept it vague on details, but explained that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year and that I was filing for divorce. My younger son was especially shaken. He'd recently been betrayed in his first relationship. His girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months earlier. Watching his heart break a second time, this time by his own mother, was hard. My older son took it much more calmly and offered to let his brother stay with him while things settled down. I agreed. We packed some of the younger one's things, and before he left, he asked if I'd be okay. I told him, "Yes, son, I'll be all right, and so will you. We'll both be fine. I promise." With that, they left. The hardest part was over. Now it was time to arm the nukes. Over the next few weeks, Ozzy helped me quietly remove my most essential belongings from the house. I gave him a prioritized list and left him a spare key while Sue and I were at work. These were items whose absence she wouldn't immediately notice. I also bought a new phone and number. I gave my new contact info to everyone who needed it. Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my sons, my sister, and my mom. Meanwhile, I kept Sue in the dark, doling out just enough affection to keep her suspicions at bay while she still maintained contact with Scumbag, though far less frequently than before. An emotional tether remained between them. All this time, I kept collecting data. Every scrap I'd saved since launching my plan, call logs, messages, photos, letters, I began printing out. I probably spent over $1,500 on office supplies, printer ink, paper, folders, you name it. I cataloged everything chronologically from the start of their affair to their last exchange on December 16th. It all fit into 14 folders. I placed the folders in a box, wrapped it like a gift, and addressed separate copies to different people.
My mother, my father passed 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters and brother, her HR department. I forgot to mention earlier that Scumbag worked at the same company as her, and there's a strict policy against workplace relationships due to the nature of her job, several of her friends, Scumbag himself, and his parents. I dropped the box at the post office on December 16th. Delivery was scheduled for December 21st through December 24. Perfect.
Update 1. And so Christmas Eve arrived. Sue came home at her usual time. I have no idea if she'd seen Scumbag that day. I had stopped monitoring her through the app on December 18. By then, I figured I had all the evidence I needed. As always, she went straight to the shower, spent a little time with me. I was playing along on the couch in the living room. Yes, I'm still a bastard. And then went to bed. The final phase was finally upon us. The nuclear bomb I'd been building since June was about to detonate. In the middle of the night, I woke up, wrapped one of the 3 remaining folders in gift paper, attached the divorce papers to the inside cover, and placed it on my side of the bed with a note that read, "Merry Christmas." I left my old phone and my attorney's business card beside it. I packed the rest of my essential belongings, everything fit into 2 backpacks, and quietly left the house I'd lived in for 23 years. That all happened a week ago. To Sue, I have completely vanished off the radar. She's blocked me on Facebook, but strangely, she still hasn't blocked me, so I can keep watching the fallout. And it's glorious. My packages reached everyone I sent them to, and Sue is now getting absolutely shredded. Her younger sister tore into her mercilessly. Her parents are furious. My mother absolutely destroyed her. I knew my mother could be ruthless, but what she said to Sue was downright brutal. Sue is desperately trying to find out where I am, but everyone who knows isn't saying a word. Her entire Facebook is filled with pleas for me to contact her, because I assume she knows I'm probably watching, but I won't say a word without my lawyer present. That will be the only time I breathe the same air as her again. There's no way she can spin this to make me look like the villain. And according to a mutual friend who works at her company, Sue and Scumbag are both on unpaid administrative leave starting tomorrow, so she'll likely begin 2021 unemployed. As for the remaining 2 folders, one I gave to my attorney as final evidence for the upcoming divorce, the other I'm keeping for myself to burn in a bonfire at Joey's once the divorce is finalized. Do I feel any guilt for what I've done? Not a shred. For 23 years, I was faithful to this woman. I gave her the home she dreamed of, the family she wanted, and the life I believed we both deserved. I loved her unconditionally, never let her down, never cheated, never even considered breaking my vows. Whenever an issue arose that I felt threatened our marriage, I came to her openly, and we worked through it together. She chose comfort in another man's bed. Instead of come to me and say she was unhappy with our intimacy at the time, she went running to a younger guy. So no, I feel no pity for her and none for what I've done. Let her burn in hell. I don't care. The only things I stand to lose are our house, my car, and maybe a few $100s a month in spousal support. But given that the divorce is being filed on grounds of adultery, the court in New York strongly favors the non-offending spouse.
That means I'll likely retain full ownership of my personal assets, avoid paying alimony, and possibly even receive a larger share of our joint property. But money isn't what I'm after. Not anymore. All I want is finality, closure, a clean break from the woman who shattered 2 decades of trust in less than a year. Anyway, back to Christmas. I spent that morning alone in my new apartment. It felt strange. No tree, no gifts, no family, but also incredibly peaceful. For the first time in months, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to act like everything was fine while silently planning nuclear-level revenge. Later that afternoon, my sons and my older son's girlfriend came over. She'd brought homemade cookies and even cooked a small dinner. It meant the world to me. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, just like old times, but better, because there was no shadow of deceit hanging over us. My sister showed up too, with a pie and a bottle of bourbon. It was the first time in nearly a year she'd seen her nephews. She hugged me tight and whispered, "You did the right thing." I needed to hear that. If I'd been alone that day, I probably would have drowned myself in whiskey, but their presence grounded me. Around 8 p.m., everyone left, and I headed over to Joey's place. Spent a couple of hours there, had a few drinks with him and his wife, Claudia, and got home just before midnight. No Santa, no carols, no fake holiday cheer, just silence and freedom.
Update 2. My wife nearly died yesterday. Here's what happened. Since only my closest friends, my sons, my older sister, and my mother have my new contact info, and I've completely blocked my wife on every platform, she's had no way to reach me since I've vanished from her life on Christmas Eve. But a few mutual friends can still get through to me. Last night, while I was at my apartment, I got a message from one of those friends, the rare few who hadn't turned their back on Sue after I exposed her affair. When I replied, he said he'd gone to check on her and found her unconscious in the bedroom, foam in her mouth with 2 empty pill bottles nearby. She's now in the ICU in critical but stable condition. Doctors say she'll likely survive but won't be okay either way. This friend begged me to come see her. Her parents and 2 sisters were already at the hospital. I assume they were notified after the hospital couldn't reach me. My old number is still listed as her emergency contact. I simply said no. Sue is no longer my problem. She clearly chose the easy way out instead of facing the shame and pain she earned by destroying our 23-year marriage. I told her friend that if her family's there, they can help her recover. But as for Sue and me, there is no us anymore. Then I ended the call. I went to bed. The next morning, my sons called to ask if I knew what happened. I said yes, but made it clear that if they wanted to be there for their mother, I wouldn't judge them. She's still their mom. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm out. I don't care what happens to her anymore. Both were a little surprised by my response, but they accepted my position. Now that word about Sue's incident has spread, many of the friends who'd abandoned her are suddenly sympathy-stricken, claiming I should be there for her despite everything she did to me. I've also been told her lover tried to visit her this morning but was turned away since he's not family. People are now pressuring me to go see her, but I feel absolutely nothing for that woman. Not anymore. Those feelings died long ago during my revenge campaign. And honestly, this only makes me despise her more. She's the one who cheated. She's the one who decided a nearly year-long affair with a man only 5 years older than our son was worth blowing up 23 years of marriage. And now, when faced with the consequences, she picks the most selfish escape possible. Even now, knowing she'll likely survive, she'll instantly regain everyone's pity. Just weeks after they condemned her for betrayal, they'll paint her as the victim, and me as the bitter ex who won't show mercy. Except her father. He called me and said he respects my decision to stay away. Right now, I feel like I never truly knew this woman at all. Yes, I understand that the way I ended things might have triggered a mental breakdown. But now I have to ask, did she do this because she genuinely lost it, or was this a calculated high-risk move to win back public sympathy after being universally condemned just weeks ago? She cheated on me, and now she's the tragic heroine? Sorry if this sounds unhinged, but I'm still processing it all. Let me be absolutely clear. I will not go to her. She lost any right to my care the day she let that scumbag inside her. I know many will judge me for this. Fine. Think whatever you want. If you'd walked in my shoes, you'd see her actions very differently. Some of you might even blame me, claim that my months of psychological warfare, making her believe I was cheating while she actively was, then destroying her life, that all of that pushed her over the edge? Maybe that's true. Maybe I am a heartless sociopath. But I gave that woman half my life and did everything I could to be the best husband for her. By her own admission, my behavior had nothing to do with her decision to cheat. She did it for herself. Her selfishness knows no bounds, and I'm glad I'm rid of her. If refusing to visit her in the hospital and never wanting to see her again makes me a bad person, so be it. I stand by my beliefs. She chose betrayal. She chose her needs over our marriage. Now it's my turn to choose myself. She can rot in the darkest corner of hell. I don't care. Let someone else help her cope. My duty to care for her ended the day we signed the legal separation agreement. I just needed to get this off my chest. If you're going to judge me for how I feel,
keep it to yourself. As I said before, after 23 years and 2 kids, I never truly knew this woman. I have zero sympathy for her, and never will.
Let her rot in hell.
Quick update. Her father told me she was transferred from the ICU to a psychiatric unit. Doctors are still monitoring her mental state. She's awake, lucid, but extremely weak. When she asked if I'd come to see her and her father said no, she broke down. He respectfully offered to keep me updated only if I requested it. He understood where I stood. I've also scheduled a therapy session for my 17-year-old son. His first appointment is this Monday. That's all for now.
Update 3. The End and Farewell. April 13th, 2021, exactly 1 month ago, Sue officially became my ex-wife. My lawyer, Jeff, had initially told me the divorce would finalize on the 18th, but partly because New York had started lifting pandemic restrictions, everything wrapped up a few days early. On April 12th, Jeff called and asked me to come to his office the next day. When I arrived, he handed me the official divorce decree and shook my hand. I couldn't just walk away. I hugged him and thanked him for everything he'd done. Driving home, I replayed the last 24 years in my head. All the memories, all the history. The moment I stepped into my apartment, it finally hit me. I collapsed on the floor, and every emotion I'd held back for over a year came rushing out. I hadn't cried like that in decades. But these weren't tears of sadness. My soul felt free after being trapped in the deepest, darkest abyss. That evening, I called my older son. I told him it was over. His mother and I were no longer married. He asked how I was feeling. I think he heard the tears in my voice. I told him I was okay. Then my younger son got on the phone, and we talked for almost an hour and a half. He's doing well. His older brother and his girlfriend have been taking great care of him, and he's still seeing his therapist regularly. Later that night, Nina came over. Of course, I told her the news. She just wrapped her arms around my waist and held me tight while I cried again. When I calmed down, she said, "No matter what happens, I'll never betray you, and I'll love you with everything I have." I knew she meant every word. Some might judge me for it, but I don't regret the life I built with Sue. Not entirely. Despite everything she did, she gave me 2 incredible sons. But now it's clear I chose the wrong woman. Nina, in just the last 4.5 months, has given me more than I ever received in return and asked for nothing. All she wants is to be by my side. I won't say much more about her, but she's truly my hero. Other things happened after the divorce was finalized. For instance, Scumbag reached out to me. He'd seen this story go viral on Fat Toad, which is a local Reddit-like forum, and immediately recognized himself. The first thing he did was apologize. He told me what happened after his mother received the folder I'd mailed her. His deeply religious, lifelong Catholic mom who attends church 3 times a week was furious. The same day, she kicked him out. Within a week, his employer, who had also gotten a copy, fired him. Since then, he's been couch surfing and struggling to find work. I'll admit, I could have crushed him completely, but I didn't. I asked when he'd last seen Sue. He said it had been months. The final time they spoke, she told him to forget her and move on. At least there, she wasn't lying. She'd told me the same. He was surprisingly honest in our 20-minute conversation, clearly seeking some kind of redemption. I confirmed much of what he said matched the messages I'd archived. I barely spoke, but I asked pointed questions. When he apologized again, I replied verbatim from our cat.
You're a 27-year-old man who live with the fact that your own mother hates you for destroying a marriage that lasted almost as long as you've been alive. I know you messaged me because guilt is eating you, but I won't give you comfort. At your age, I was building a future. Now you're a homeless, unemployed family wrecker. If you're smart, you'll learn from this. If not, you'll remain a loser until you reach my age, if you even live that long. I'd wish you luck, but you don't need luck. You need to rebuild your life. Then I blocked him. It wasn't the response he expected, and I could have been crueler, but I think those words will haunt him longer than any insult ever could.
The next big event? May 4, 2021, Nina now carries my last name. Over the past 2 months, we talked extensively about where our relationship was headed. It became clear Nina never wanted anyone but me. And she wanted to take my name, become my wife, and have me formally adopt her daughter. We'll call her Anna. I adore that little girl. She turned 6 months old last month and absolutely adores me. I'm the first father figure in her life. Her biological dad left when she was 4 months old. Nina had consciously refused to introduce Anna to any man she dated unless he showed real long-term potential. I clearly had that potential, and experience raising kids. Plus, my younger son and Anna are inseparable. Their sibling bond is both heartwarming and uncanny. He's already deeply attached to her. My therapist said, that's a very positive sign. So last Monday, we went to City Hall and made it official. It took just 24 hours to get the marriage certificate. Telling everyone was hilarious. Ozzy said, like anyone's surprised. My sister added, all right, I'm taking bets on when the pregnancy post drops. Turns out everyone knew we were together long before we went public. Some might say we moved too fast. And yes, I once said I'd never marry again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings. She cried in my arms, saying she never believed she'd get a chance to be with me. She shared how she'd felt about me for the past 25 years, even while married to someone else, and how she'd always regretted that Sue won me before she could say anything. She admitted she had occasionally fantasized about being with me, but refused to become a homewrecker. And still, after all these years, she gave me so much and asked for so little in return. Even my ex-wife, the mother of my children, never showed me the kind of loyalty and love Nina has. I'd have been a fool not to give her my name. Now she has it, and we've begun the legal process to adopt Anna. As for Sue, I haven't spoken to her since I left the house nearly 4 months ago, but mutual friends occasionally send updates. One, a realtor, told me she sold the house and hired her as an office assistant, then canceled the spousal support I'd been paying due to her unemployment. She now lives in a small apartment near his office, which he also helped her find. She's a ghost of her former self. Withdrawn, quiet, keeps to herself. Probably because, as you know, her workplace affair is exactly what started all this. The last I heard from her was end of March. I thanked her friend for watching over her, but asked not to be updated about her life anymore. She's no longer my concern. I'm almost certain she knows about Nina and me. Some mutual friends have mentioned it. And since my younger son turns 18 in a year, I have zero reason and zero intention to ever speak to her again. That's it. My story is over. Thank you for your kind words, your support, and for reading all the way to the end.
I can definitely understand where the author is coming from, and honestly, I agree with him. Yeah, it was harsh, but if you put yourself in his shoes, his actions make complete sense. That said, mailing all those folders to family members, friends, and their workplace, to me, that felt like overkill. I get that it's his personal story, but did it really need to be aired so publicly? And legally speaking, turns out that in New York, sharing private messages with an employer without consent might actually violate privacy laws. From what I found online, it's unlikely anyone would win a case over it, but it's still a gray area at the very least. Also, I'm a bit puzzled about the adoption. Why formally adopt Nina's daughter? Couldn't he just raise her as part of the family without making it legal? If things ever went south between them later, he'd be on the hook for full financial responsibility even though she's not his biological child. Still, it's his life, his choices. What do you think? Do you agree with him, or do you see it differently? Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. Be sure to check out our previous video, links right here, and if you enjoy long, real-life drama stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And good luck out there!